everyone. Happy Friday. I'm here in the classroom again, trying to get it all nice and organized. I put up some decorations there and some decorations on the windows. I promise I'm trying to make it as fun and homey as we possibly can while still staying safe and easy to clean. All right, here's your review lesson for this week. Let's go over some of the letters that we learned, our new letters we learned this week. We did H, and here is uppercase H, and here is lowercase h, and both uppercase and lowercase h make the same sound. They both make a ha sound, like a building that you live in. What's a building that you and your family live in that start with an H? It's a house, right? What is something that starts with an H that you would wear on your head if you were cold to keep your head warm? It would be a hat. And what is a type of animal that starts with an H? So it starts with a ha sound. It has hooves. It eats hay, and it goes neigh. What kind of animal? It's a horse. Horse. And what is a type of animal? It's a female chicken. So a girl chicken that lays eggs. And remember, I showed you one of mine that lives in the backyard named Esther. Do you remember? It starts with an H. It'd be a hen. A hen. So a chicken is either a rooster if it's a boy or a hen if it's a girl. So hen starts with an H. And the last one, this type of animal lives in Africa. It can open its mouth really wide. It has big teeth, and it lives in swamps in Africa. And it starts with an H. A hippopotamus. A hippo starts with the letter H. We're going to learn all about Africa and African animals a little bit later in the year in social studies. Really fun unit. Okay, let's talk about our next letter we learned. We also learned the letter K. And we have two Australian. Well, first let's go over, here's uppercase K. So uppercase K, this little part right here, that sideways part that's kind of hard to write, that goes up to the skyline. Lowercase k, it looks almost exactly the same, except this little part right here does not go up to the skyline. It only goes to the grass line, or the plain line, the dotted plain line. Okay, so that's the difference, and we'll talk a little bit more about writing them in a minute. But first, let's talk about some things that start with a K. K makes a k sound, like these two Australian animals that are both marsupials, which means they both have pouches and they carry their babies in their pouches. Do you know what two Australian animals start with a K? The kangaroo and koala, both start with a K sound. All right, and then we have something that you use to open a door that starts with a K sound, that you unlock a door with a key. And the last one, this is something you would play with on a windy day outside, and you would blow it. It goes on a string, starts with a K, a kite. All right, now let's talk a little bit about writing our uppercase H and lowercase h. We'll do H first. Okay, so make sure that if you want to practice with me, make sure you have your dry erase marker and dry erase board. Make sure you can see skyline at the top, plain line in the middle, then grass line, and worm line all the way down there at the very bottom. But we won't go down to the worm line for H or K, okay? We haven't gone down to the worm line yet for a letter, I don't think. Letters that have tails, like G and Y, those are the letters that go down to the worm line. Okay, let's start with uppercase H. So put your marker on the skyline. Put your marker on the skyline and go straight on down to the grass line. Oops, my line's not very straight, but that's okay. Just do the best you can. And then scooch over just a little bit on the skyline and go straight on down to the grass line over there. Then we need to connect them. So put your marker on the plain line and connect your two lines on the plane line. And there's uppercase H. So make sure uppercase H doesn't go above the skyline. Make sure it doesn't go below the grass line. And try to make sure that your line that connects the two is on the plane line, as close to the dotted plane line as you can get it. All right, I'm going to erase my uppercase H, and now let's try a lowercase h. Okay, lowercase h also starts on the skyline, whoops, and goes straight on down to the grass line. Then you start on the plane line and curve around to the grass line. So do you see the bottom of my lowercase h? It doesn't connect. The bottom of the lowercase h doesn't connect. Look what happens if I connect the lines. What letter does it turn into if I connect the lines? It turns into a B, a lowercase b. So we're not doing B, so you gotta be really careful. Don't connect those lines at the bottom of lowercase h, okay? Make sure they both end on the grass line. All right, now let's try K. Let's do an uppercase K, a big K. So we start on the skyline and go straight down to the grass line. Then we're gonna start on the skyline again and slant backwards down to the plane line, and then slant forwards down to the grass line. Kind of a tricky letter, but y'all were doing great on this week. So this part is just a straight line, right? And this part kind of looks like a sideways V. That might help you remember how to write it a little bit. It kind of looks like a sideways V. Okay, I'm gonna erase my uppercase K, and now I'm gonna practice my lowercase k. All right, so for lowercase k, we start the same way. Skyline, straight down to grass line. Then, instead of starting on the skyline again, we're gonna start on the plane line. And it might help you to maybe draw a little dot about halfway between the skyline or the plane line and the grass line, right there on that line, and that's where you're gonna go. That's where you're gonna slant backwards to. So start on the plane line and slant backwards about halfway between the plane line and grass line, and then slant forwards down to the grass line. And there's your lowercase k. So for lowercase k, your first line, make sure it doesn't go above the skyline. Make sure it doesn't go below the grass line. And then the second thing you did, that little sideways V, oops, make sure the little sideways V doesn't go above the plane line. Make sure it doesn't go below the grass line. Okay? Now we can put our lids back on our markers. Make sure they're nice and tight so they don't dry out. And you can erase your board, keep it nice and clean so it's ready for the next time we use it. And we're done with our letter practice and our handwriting. And now let's work on some graphs and some tally charts. You all were doing some great graphing this week. So for today's little review lesson, you really don't have to do anything but just look and listen and watch and pay attention, okay? You're gonna help me graph some blocks, okay? We've got a bunch of blocks and I wanna make a tally chart to figure out which blocks we have the most of and which blocks we have the least of, okay? So if you have a bunch of blocks, and I'm gonna take them all apart, and I'm just gonna put them in my lap here, and then I'll try to move the camera so you can see. Well, if you just have a bunch of blocks like that, it's really hard to tell how many of each color you have, right? They're just a bunch of blocks all mixed together. So tally charts and graphs help us show information, okay? So first, let's count our green blocks. Let's count our green blocks. And I'm going to draw a green block right here. And then we're going to put tally marks next to the green blocks to see how many we have. Okay, let's count our green blocks. Let's see, I see 1, 2, 3 green blocks. So that means we need to put 3 lines on our tally chart. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, next, let's count the red blocks. All right, help me count all the red ones. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red blocks. So that means we need 5 tally marks next to the red. Okay, here's my red block. Now, help me count 5 tally marks to show that we have 5 red blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th tally mark is always sideways. So we know that if it looks like this, that's a 5. That shows 5. Okay, now last one. Let's count our blue blocks. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 blue blocks. Okay, I don't think I have a blue marker up here, so we'll just use a black block, but we'll pretend that's blue. Okay, so we had 7, so let's see, let's help me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that 5th line is always sideways, so that's 5, 6, 7. So do you see how when you have a bunch of something, like blocks, and they're all mixed up in a pile like this, it's really hard to tell which one you have the most of and which one you have the least of, right? But when you put the information into a chart or a graph, then it's really easy to tell. Well, look, we know we have the least green, because that's only 3 little tallies next to green. And we know we have the most blue, because look, there's 5, 6, 7 next to blue. Okay, so that's why we use charts and graphs. All right, you did wonderful this week with all of that. Last little thing we'll do today, let's just read a fun book, okay? And then we can be all done. So this book is called Not Quite Narwhal, and it's a super cute book about fitting in, and this little narwhal realizes that it's okay to be different. You don't have to fit in. That's what makes our friends so fun, is that everybody's different. Okay, so Not Quite Narwhal. And a narwhal is a real mammal. Now, they don't really look, let me find a narwhal. They do kind of look like this. They live underwater, but they're a mammal. So even though they live underwater, they still breathe air, and they still have live babies, and their babies still drink milk even when they're born underwater. And they really do have like a tusk like this. So it's pretty cool. All right, let's start reading. Kelp was born deep in the ocean. He knew early on that he was different from the other narwhals. And he said his tusk wasn't as long as everyone else's. He had different tastes in food. Look, narwhals love to eat octopus, but he's not really a narwhal, right? He looks more like a unicorn. And unicorns, if they were real, probably wouldn't eat octopus, right? Because they don't live underwater. And he wasn't a very good swimmer. So narwhals in real life live underwater, and they're excellent swimmers. But unicorns, if they were real, they wouldn't live underwater, right? So they probably wouldn't be very good swimmers. But his friends didn't seem to mind, so Kelp decided he wouldn't mind either. That is, until he was swept away on a strong current. And Kelp says, I wish I were a better swimmer. Kelp found himself at the surface, closer to land than he'd ever been before. High up on a cliff, he spotted a mysterious, sparkling creature. It looked so familiar. It looked like Kelp. Kelp swam toward land as fast as he could, which wasn't very fast at all, hoping that he could catch up with the creature that looked just like him. When he finally reached the shore, Kelp felt a little bit anxious. He had never left the ocean before. He was nervous about walking for the first time, land creatures made it look so easy. It wasn't. Oof. Ow. So first, Kelp tries to walk sideways like a crab, and then he tries to hop like a frog. Eventually, he got the hang of it. So when he tried to slowly walk carefully 1 foot at a time like a turtle, he could do that. Everything on land was strange and beautiful, but also kind of scary. Kelp began to think he might never find the creature that looked just like him. But as he stumbled out of the forest, land narwhals! Look, he calls them all land narwhals. And the unicorn says, actually, we're unicorns. And by the looks of it, so are you. Kelp had never heard of a unicorn before. They taught him all sorts of new things about his tusk. We call them horns. Wow! They introduced him to unicorn delicacies, unicorns. And they showed him how to gallop. There was no doubt that Kelp was, in fact, a unicorn. He was having so much fun that he didn't want to leave. But then he remembered all of his friends under the sea. Kelp missed them terribly, so he said goodbye to the unicorns and returned to the ocean. And the unicorn says, "Come back soon." Kelp swam toward home as fast as he could, which wasn't very fast at all, hoping that the narwhals would still like him now that he was a unicorn. When he finally arrived, Kelp had butterflies in his stomach. That means he was nervous. And let's see, their sign says, "Welcome home, Kelp." Oh, the narwhals are just happy that their friend is back. Kelp took a deep breath and told his friends the news. "It turns out I'm not a narwhal." "Of course you aren't," they said. "I'm actually a unicorn." We all knew that. They took it quite well. So it turns out that even though maybe Kelp didn't realize that he wasn't actually a narwhal, he was actually a unicorn, all of his narwhal friends already knew that, but they didn't mind. They loved him anyway. Kelp was happy to be home, but now that he had experienced life on land with the unicorns, he couldn't seem to forget them. So look, we know he's so torn because look here, he drew a picture of a narwhal. He drew a picture of a unicorn. He's so torn. Which one does he want? Where does he want to live? Did he want to be a land narwhal with the unicorns or a sea unicorn with the narwhals? Kelp couldn't decide. But then he realized that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to choose. Look, now everybody is living together. Look at that, and the unicorns are getting along with the narwhals, and the narwhals are getting along with the unicorns, and they're all playing and being friends together. That is the best part about having friends that are different from you, is because they can teach you things. I'm a unicorn. Oh my gosh, that last page is so funny. The rhinoceros thinks he's a unicorn, and Kelp has to tell him, you're actually not a unicorn. So funny. All right, class, that was a good book. Not Quite Narwhal by Jessie Sima. So that's who wrote the words and drew the pictures. Okay, I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Bye.